The boardroom fell silent when Vincent Zhao slammed his hand on the mahogany table, his dark eyes blazing with an intensity that made every executive in the room straighten their spines. Penelope Zimmerman sat at the opposite end, her arms crossed, her soft features set in a stubborn expression that matched his fury note for note. "These numbers are unacceptable," Vincent said, his voice low and controlled, the kind of quiet that preceded a storm. "We need aggressive expansion, not this cautious tiptoeing around market volatility." Penelope stood up, smoothing down her cream-colored cardigan. Where Vincent was all sharp angles and expensive Italian suits, she wore comfortable clothes that prioritized function over fashion. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her glasses kept sliding down her nose as she gathered her papers. "What's unacceptable is risking the livelihoods of 300 employees because you want to see bigger numbers on a quarterly report," she said, her voice steady but warm, the way a kindergarten teacher might explain why hitting wasn't nice. "Real people work here, Vincent. They have families, mortgages, dreams. We should grow responsibly." Vincent's jaw tightened. As CEO of Zhao Manufacturing, a company that produced high-end automotive parts, he had built his reputation on bold decisions and calculated risks. At 32, he was one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country, having taken his father's struggling factory and transformed it into an industry leader. He lived for the rush of a successful merger, the thrill of beating competitors, the satisfaction of seeing his company dominate market share. And then there was Penelope Zimmerman, his head of human resources, who seemed to exist solely to remind him that feelings mattered and people weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. She was 30 years old, had been with the company for 5 years, and drove him absolutely insane with her constant advocacy for work-life balance and employee wellness programs. "This meeting is over," Vincent said curtly. "I'll make the final decision myself." The other executives filed out quickly, grateful to escape the tension. Penelope lingered, organizing her papers with deliberate slowness. "You know," she said quietly, "one day you're going to realize that caring about people doesn't make you weak, it makes you human." Vincent didn't respond. He waited until she left before allowing himself to loosen his tie. The woman was insufferable, absolutely insufferable. And yet, he couldn't deny that employee turnover had decreased by 40% since she had implemented her various programs. Exit interviews showed higher satisfaction rates. Productivity was actually up. He hated that she might be right about some things, not that he would ever admit it. Outside the building, Penelope took a deep breath of the cool autumn air. Working with Vincent Zhao was like trying to convince a brick wall to consider the feelings of the bricks around it. The man was brilliant. She couldn't deny that. Under his leadership, the company had tripled in size. But he was so focused on success that he forgot the human cost of his decisions. Her phone buzzed. It was her sister, Deanne. "Hey, still on for dinner tonight?" Deanne asked. "Absolutely. I need to vent about my impossible boss," Deanne laughed. "Still butting heads with the billionaire." "He doesn't see people, Deanne. He sees assets and liabilities." Today, he wanted to cut benefits to fund an acquisition that might not even pan out. "And you stopped him." "I presented alternative solutions. Whether he listens is another matter." They agreed to meet at their favorite Italian restaurant at 7. Penelope went back to her office and spent the afternoon reviewing employee feedback forms and preparing a presentation for the quarterly HR review. She loved her job, loved helping people, loved creating programs that made workers feel valued and supported. If only her CEO wasn't so resistant to every suggestion she made. That evening, over plates of pasta and glasses of wine, Penelope tried to forget about work. "You're too invested," Deanne said, twirling linguine around her fork. "He's your boss, not your project. I'm not trying to fix him. I'm trying to do my job, which involves going head-to-head with a billionaire CEO regularly. Penny, most people would be terrified of him. You argue with him like he's a stubborn student." Penelope shrugged. "Someone has to stand up for the employees, and honestly, I think underneath all that cold exterior there might be a decent person. I've seen glimpses of it." "Oh no," Deanne said, pointing her fork accusingly. "No, no, no, you do not have a crush on Vincent Zhao." "What? No, absolutely not. He's arrogant, stubborn, and has the emotional range of a calculator." "Uh-huh, and you just spent 10 minutes defending him." "I did not. You literally said there might be a decent person underneath." Penelope felt her cheeks warm. "I meant professionally. He's not a monster, just misguided about priorities." Deanne gave her a knowing look but mercifully changed the subject. Still, as Penelope drove home that night, she found herself thinking about Vincent in the boardroom, the way his eyes had flashed with passion when he talked about expansion plans. He cared about the company, truly cared. He just showed it differently than she did, not that it mattered. They were oil and water, fire and ice, every cliché about opposites that existed. There was no universe in which they would ever be compatible. The next morning, Penelope arrived at work to find an email waiting for her. Vincent wanted to see her in his office at 8:30. She checked her watch. She had 15 minutes to prepare for whatever battle was coming. His office was on the top floor, a massive space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Everything was sleek and modern, from the minimalist desk to the abstract art on the walls. Vincent stood by the window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the skyline. "You wanted to see me?" Penelope asked from the doorway. He turned and she noticed he looked tired. Not just tired, exhausted. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. "Come in. Close the door." She did, her heart rate picking up slightly. Was he going to fire her? "Tell her to stop challenging him." "I reviewed your alternative proposals," he said, moving to his desk. He picked up a folder, her folder. She recognized her handwriting on the tab. "The phased approach to expansion, maintaining current benefits while finding cost savings in operational efficiency rather than employee compensation. And it's solid. Aggressive enough to satisfy the board, conservative enough to minimize risk." He set the folder down and met her eyes. "I'm implementing your plan." Penelope blinked. "You are. Don't make me repeat myself. I'm not saying you're right about everything, but in this case your approach has merit." A smile tugged at her lips. Was that a compliment? It was an acknowledgement of competence. "Don't let it go to your head." "Too late. I'm going to mark this day on my calendar. October 15th, the day Vincent Zhao admitted I had a good idea." The corner of his mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. "Get out of my office, Zimmerman." She left feeling oddly light. Maybe they were making progress after all. Over the following weeks, something shifted between them. Vincent started including her in strategy meetings earlier in the planning process, asking for her input before decisions were finalized rather than after. Penelope found herself staying late to discuss various initiatives with him, the two of them alone in his office while the rest of the building emptied out. "Why HR?" Vincent asked one evening in early November. They had been reviewing succession planning documents, and somehow the conversation had drifted to more personal territory. Penelope leaned back in her chair. "My dad worked at a factory for 30 years. He was loyal, hardworking, never missed a day. Then the company was acquired by a larger corporation, and he was laid off 3 months before his retirement would have vested. Just like that, 3 decades of service meant nothing. I watched what it did to him, how it broke something inside him. I decided that if I ever had the power to influence how companies treated people, I would. Vincent was quiet for a moment. What happened to him? He found another job eventually, but it wasn't the same. He died 5 years ago. Heart attack. She smiled sadly. I think part of him never recovered from feeling so disposable. I'm sorry. It's why I fight so hard, she continued. Every employee here is someone's father or mother or child. They matter beyond their productivity metrics. Vincent nodded slowly. My father built this company from nothing. He worked himself to death doing it literally. Massive stroke at 53, right there in the factory. I was 23, fresh out of business school, and suddenly I was in charge of a failing company and a workforce that was terrified of losing their jobs. Penelope hadn't known that. She had known Vincent's father died young, but not the circumstances. I promised myself I would never let the company fail, Vincent said. Every decision I make, every risk I take, it's to honor his legacy and protect what he built. You're protecting the company, Penelope said softly. I'm trying to protect the people in it. Maybe we're not so different after all. Their eyes met across the desk, and something passed between them, an understanding, a connection that hadn't been there before. Vincent cleared his throat and looked away first. It's late. You should go home. So should you. When was the last time you left before 9? I live alone. There's no reason to rush home. You need rest. Even CEOs need sleep. Are you mothering me, Zimmerman? Someone has to. You're running yourself into the ground. This time he did smile, a real one that transformed his entire face. Penelope felt something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with work and everything to do with how attractive he looked when he wasn't scowling. She stood quickly. Good night, Vincent. Good night, Penelope. It was the first time he had used her first name. Thanksgiving approached, and the company held its annual potluck luncheon. Penelope had organized it, as she did every year, transforming the cafeteria into a festive space with decorations and music. She had expected Vincent to make a brief appearance, say a few words, and disappear back to his office. Instead, he stayed. He filled a plate with food, sat at a table with employees from the manufacturing floor, and actually engaged in conversation. Penelope watched from across the room, amazed. Is that our CEO being personable? Asked Marcus from accounting. I think it is, Penelope murmured. Later, as she was cleaning up, Vincent appeared beside her, rolling up his sleeves. What are you doing? She asked. Helping. That's allowed, isn't it? I'm just surprised. They worked in companionable silence, packing away decorations and stacking chairs. The cafeteria staff had already left, and the building was quiet around them. This was nice, Vincent said. Thank you for organizing it. It's my job. It's more than that. You create community here. I've been so focused on growth and profits that I forgot companies are made of people, not just assets. Penelope set down the box she was holding. Vincent, are you feeling okay? He laughed, the sound surprising them both. I'm trying to say thank you. I'm not very good at it. You're doing fine. They stood there, surrounded by folded tablecloths and leftover decorations, looking at each other. The air felt charged somehow, full of unspoken things. Vincent stepped closer. Penelope, his phone rang, shattering the moment. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and sighed. I have to take this. Board member, of course. Go ahead. He answered as he walked away, his voice sliding back into business mode. Penelope released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. What had just almost happened? December brought a crisis. One of their biggest clients threatened to move their business to a competitor unless Zhao Manufacturing could drastically reduce prices. The contract represented 20% of their annual revenue. Losing it would be devastating. Vincent called an emergency meeting with his senior leadership team. Around the table sat his CFO, Ku, head of sales, and Penelope. "We have three options," Vincent said, pacing in front of the windows. "We match their price demands by cutting operational costs. We let them walk and absorb the loss, or we convince them that our quality and service are worth the premium price." "Cutting costs means layoffs," the CFO said bluntly. "There's no other way to reduce expenses by that margin." All eyes turned to Penelope. She felt the weight of 300 employees resting on her shoulders. "How many jobs?" she asked quietly. 50, maybe 60. Vincent's face was unreadable. She could see him calculating, weighing the math of it. 50 jobs versus the company's financial stability. "What about option 3? She asked. "Making the case for our value. It's a long shot," the head of sales said. "They're focused on the bottom line." "So we give them data," Penelope said, her mind racing. "Customer satisfaction scores, defect rates compared to competitors, on-time delivery statistics. We show them that choosing the cheaper option will cost them more in the long run through quality issues and customer complaints." Vincent stopped pacing. "Put together a presentation. We meet with them in 3 days." The next 72 hours were a blur of activity. Penelope worked alongside the sales team, compiling evidence and crafting a narrative. Vincent refined the business strategy, identifying exactly where their value proposition was strongest. They worked through nights, surviving on coffee and determination, gradually building a case that was genuinely compelling. The night before the meeting, Penelope was alone in the conference room at 11, arranging printed materials when Vincent walked in. "You should be resting," he said. "You need to be sharp tomorrow. So should you, but here we are." He sat down across from her, loosening his tie. "If this doesn't work, it will work. You don't know that. I believe in what we've built. This presentation shows the truth about this company. If they can't see the value in that, then they're not the right partner for us anyway." Vincent studied her for a long moment. "You really care, don't you, about all of this? The company, the employees, even me, despite how difficult I've been." "You're not difficult. You're driven." "There's a difference, Penelope." He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The touch sent electricity up her arm. "If I haven't said it clearly enough, you've changed how I see everything. This company is better because of you. I'm better because of you." Her heart hammered in her chest. "Vincent, I know this is complicated. You work for me, which makes any kind of personal relationship inappropriate. But I can't stop thinking about you. I can't stop wanting to be around you. You challenge me and frustrate me and make me want to be the kind of leader you believe I can be." She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. "I think about you too, more than I should, but you're right, it's complicated. After this is resolved," he said. "After the client meeting, after we know where we stand, can we figure this out? See if there's something real here," she smiled. "I'd like that." They sat there, hands joined across the table, neither wanting to be the first to let go. The client meeting was intense. Vincent and Penelope presented together, a seamless partnership that highlighted both the business case and the human element. They showed data, shared testimonials, and painted a picture of a company that wasn't just a vendor but a committed partner. The clients asked hard questions. Vincent fielded the financial and strategic ones with his typical precision. When they asked about reliability and service, Penelope shared stories of how their team had gone above and beyond, how their employee retention and satisfaction directly correlated to better customer outcomes. 3 hours later, they walked out with a renewed contract at their original pricing. The office erupted in celebration when news spread. No layoffs, no benefit cuts. The company was secure. That evening, Vincent found Penelope in her office. She was on the phone with her sister, laughing about something. He waited in the doorway until she hung up. "Celebrating?" he asked. Deanne wanted to know if I was still employed. I told her the good news. "We make a good team. We do." She stood, walking around her desk to face him. "So, about that conversation we were having. I've been thinking about it constantly." "Me too. Vincent, I want to explore this, whatever this is between us. But I need to know you're serious. I'm not interested in being a fling or a distraction. I've never been more serious about anything outside of business in my life." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "I want to take you to dinner. Real dinner, not a working meal. I want to know everything about you. I want to see if we can be as good together personally as we are professionally. What about the power dynamic? I work for you." "You're right to bring that up. If we do this, we do it properly. HR policies exist for a reason. We'll be transparent with the board, maintain absolute professionalism at work, and make sure there's no perception of favoritism or impropriety." "You've really thought this through." "I'm a CEO. I think everything through." He reached up, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Penelope Zimmerman, would you have dinner with me this Saturday?" As a date, not as colleagues, her smile was radiant. "Yes. Absolutely yes." Their first date was at a small French restaurant tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place that didn't advertise and relied on word of mouth. Vincent picked her up at her apartment, and when she opened the door, his expression made her glad she had spent an extra 30 minutes on her appearance. "You look beautiful," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. "You clean up pretty well yourself." Dinner was everything she had hoped for and more. Without the backdrop of work, they talked freely. She learned that he played piano, that he had a weakness for old Western movies, that he volunteered at a youth entrepreneurship program on weekends. He discovered that she painted watercolors, that she had once considered becoming a teacher, that she could quote entire scenes from Pride and Prejudice from memory. "Wait," he said, setting down his wine glass. "You're an Austen fan." "Obsessed. I've read Pride and Prejudice at least 20 times. "And you didn't compare me to Mr. Darcy even once during all those arguments we had," she grinned. "The thought may have crossed my mind. Let me guess. Proud, prejudiced, terrible at expressing emotions. Initially off-putting but secretly decent underneath." They laughed together, and Penelope marveled at how easy this felt, how natural. After dinner, they walked through the city, bundled against the December cold. Vincent took her hand, and she laced her fingers through his. "I can't remember the last time I did this," he admitted. "Just walked with someone, no agenda, no schedule. You work too much, so do you." "Fair point." They ended up at a park, sitting on a bench despite the chill, watching their breath form clouds in the air. "Penelope," Vincent said, "I want to be honest with you about something." Her stomach tightened. "Okay. I've dated before, but I've never been good at relationships. I get absorbed in work and neglect everything else. It's part of why I'm still single at 32. I'm telling you this because you deserve to know what you're getting into. I'm going to mess up, probably frequently, but I want to try. With you, I want to try." She squeezed his hand. "I appreciate your honesty, and I'm not perfect either. I can be stubborn. I have strong opinions about things. I'll probably drive you crazy with my insistence on work-life balance while simultaneously being a workaholic myself. So we're both flawed humans. I can work with that." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their first kiss was soft and tentative, a question and an answer all at once. When they broke apart, both were smiling. "I should take you home," Vincent said. "Even though I don't want this to end. There will be other dates. Many other dates if I have anything to say about it." True to his word, Vincent courted her properly. They saw each other regularly outside of work dinners, movies, a winter festival where they drank hot chocolate and ice skated terribly. At the office, they maintained professionalism, though Penelope occasionally caught him watching her during meetings with an expression that made her heart skip. They informed the board about their relationship after a month of dating. The response was mostly positive, with some guidelines established to prevent any conflicts of interest. Penelope reported to the CFO for review purposes, and they both agreed to be transparent about their relationship with the leadership team. Not everyone was thrilled. There was gossip, inevitable in any workplace romance. Some people speculated that Penelope had used their relationship to advance her career, despite the fact that she had been head of HR long before they started dating. Vincent addressed it directly in a company-wide meeting. "I want to be clear," he said, his voice firm. "My personal relationship with Penelope Zimmerman does not change how this company operates. She earned her position through competence and dedication. Our relationship is built on mutual respect and shared values. Anyone who has a problem with that can speak to me directly." Penelope appreciated his support, even as she hated being the center of attention. But gradually, as people saw that nothing had changed in how the company functioned, the gossip died down. Christmas came, and Vincent invited Penelope to meet his family, his mother and younger sister, both of whom still lived in the city. "I should warn you," he said as they drove to his mother's house. "My mom is protective, and my sister will interrogate you. I can handle protective mothers and interrogating sisters." Mrs. Zhao was elegant and warm, welcoming Penelope with a hug. Vincent's sister, Vivian, was a year younger and worked as an architect. She cornered Penelope in the kitchen within 20 minutes. "So you're the one who's made my brother smile again," Vivian said, chopping vegetables. "Again. He's been so serious since Dad died. All work, no joy. But ever since he started talking about you, and trust me, he talks about you constantly, he's been different, lighter. He talks about me." Vivian grinned. "Oh, constantly. Penelope said this, Penelope did that. It's adorable and slightly nauseating." Over dinner, Mrs. Zhao shared stories about Vincent as a child, his determination, his competitive nature, but also his kindness. "He used to bring home stray animals," she said. "Every hurt bird, every lost kitten, he wanted to save everything." "Mom," Vincent protested, but he was smiling. "It's true. Under that serious exterior, my son has always had a big heart. He just forgets to show it sometimes." Penelope reached under the table and squeezed Vincent's hand. He squeezed back. Later, as they drove back to her apartment, Vincent was quiet. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Today was good, really good. Thank you for being so wonderful with my family. They're lovely. Your mom is sweet and Vivian is hilarious. She told me she approves, by the way. Her exact words were that if I didn't marry you, she would question my intelligence." Penelope laughed. "We've only been dating 2 months. No one's talking about marriage." "Not yet," he said quietly, and something in his tone made her pulse quicken. The new year brought new challenges at work. A competitor announced a major innovation that threatened their market position. Vincent threw himself into developing a response strategy, and Penelope watched him slip back into his old patterns, working 18-hour days, skipping meals, operating on caffeine and sheer will. One evening in late January, she found him in his office at 10, surrounded by reports and prototypes. "Vincent, you need to go home. I'm close to a breakthrough. You're close to exhaustion. When was the last time you slept more than 4 hours? I don't know, does it matter?" She walked over and gently closed his laptop. "Yes, it matters. You can't solve problems when your brain is fried. Penelope, I don't have time for this. Make time, because I'm not watching you work yourself to death." He looked up at her and she saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the stress etched in the lines around his mouth. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly. "This innovation could make us irrelevant. Everything my father built, everything I've worked for, it could all crumble." She sat on the edge of his desk. "Or you could adapt, innovate in response, but you can't do any of that if you burn out. Vincent, you have an entire team of talented people. Delegate, trust them, trust me." He reached for her hand. "I'm not used to leaning on people. I know, but that's what partners do, they lean on each other." Over the next weeks, Vincent slowly learned to share the burden. He involved his leadership team more deeply in strategy sessions. He took breaks, went home at reasonable hours, and spent weekends with Penelope instead of at the office. Together, they developed a response to the competitive threat that played to their strengths: customization and service, rather than trying to out-innovate the innovation. By March, the strategy was working. They had retained their key clients, and even won several new contracts by positioning themselves as the premium, service-focused alternative. Spring arrived with cherry blossoms and warmer temperatures. Vincent and Penelope had been dating for 5 months, and what had started as attraction had deepened into something profound. They had found a rhythm together, balancing their demanding careers with a relationship that nurtured them both. One Saturday in April, Vincent picked her up early. "Where are we going?" Penelope asked, noticing he was driving out of the city. "You'll see." An hour later, they pulled up to a large property with rolling fields and a small farmhouse. In the distance, she could see the factory building where Zhao Manufacturing had started 30 years ago. "This was my father's original facility," Vincent said as they walked the property. "He bought this land with every penny he had, built that factory with his own hands. When we expanded, we moved to the city facility, but we still own this. It's beautiful." They walked to a spot overlooking the fields, the morning sun painting everything gold. Vincent turned to her, taking both her hands in his. "Penelope, you know I'm not good with words. I express myself through actions, through spreadsheets and strategies. But I need to tell you something clearly, so there's no ambiguity." Her heart started racing. "When you walked into that boardroom last year and challenged me, I thought you were an obstacle, someone who didn't understand business or what it took to succeed. I was so wrong. You understood the most important thing, that businesses are made of people, and people matter. You taught me to see what I had been missing." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "These past months with you have been the happiest of my life. You make me want to be better, not just as a CEO but as a person. You've shown me that caring isn't weakness and that success means nothing if you're alone. Penelope Zimmerman, I love you. I want to build a life with you, one that honors both our values. Will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring, elegant and simple, perfectly her style. Tears streamed down Penelope's face. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her, holding her close as the spring breeze rustled through the fields around them. "I love you too," she whispered against his lips. "So much." They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, the abandoned factory and vast sky witnessing the beginning of their forever. The engagement announcement was met with excitement at work. Even the skeptics who had questioned their relationship had come to see how genuine their connection was. They had proven that it was possible to be partners in both business and life, without compromising either. Planning the wedding became a joint project that reflected both their personalities. Penelope wanted something intimate and meaningful. Vincent wanted to ensure both their families and the people important to them could celebrate together. They compromised on a medium-sized ceremony at a vineyard, scheduled for September. The months leading up to the wedding were busy but joyful. Vincent surprised Penelope with his engagement in the planning process. She had expected him to be hands-off, too busy with work, but instead he had opinions about flowers and seating arrangements and insisted on being involved in every decision. "I thought you'd delegate this to me," she said one evening as they sampled cakes. "Are you kidding? This is the most important merger I'll ever negotiate. I'm not missing a moment of it." She laughed, and the baker laughed with them, charmed by the CEO who took wedding cake flavors as seriously as quarterly earnings. At work, they continued to be an effective partnership. The company thrived under their combined leadership, Vincent's strategic vision, balanced by Penelope's human-centered approach. They had proven that caring about profits and caring about people weren't mutually exclusive. In August, a major opportunity emerged. A European company wanted to acquire one of their smaller competitors and had approached Vincent about a partnership that would give Zhao manufacturing access to international markets. It was the kind of expansion Vincent had always dreamed about. But it would require significant resources and attention, particularly in the first year. It would mean long hours, international travel, time away from home. Vincent discussed it with Penelope over dinner at their favorite restaurant. "It's an incredible opportunity," she said after he had laid out the details. "But the timing is terrible. We're getting married in 4 weeks, and I know we've talked about starting a family soon after. So what do you want to do?" He was quiet for a moment, considering. "A year ago, I would have jumped at this without hesitation. The company came before everything else, but you've taught me that life is about more than business success. I'm not asking you to choose between me and your career. I know, but I'm choosing us. We'll explore this opportunity after we've settled into married life. Maybe in a year or two when the timing is better." Penelope reached across the table. "Are you sure? I don't want you to resent me." "I could never resent you. Penelope, you're my priority now. We are my priority. The business will still be there. This exact opportunity might not be, but others will come. I'm not willing to sacrifice our relationship before it even really begins." She felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you. I love you too." "Now, more importantly, did you confirm the final headcount with the caterer?" She laughed through her tears. "Yes, Mr. Detail-oriented." "Good. Because I analyzed the seating chart and I think we can optimize the arrangement for better conversation flow." "Did you just say optimize the seating chart?" "I may have created a spreadsheet." "You're ridiculous. You're marrying me anyway." Their wedding day was perfect. The vineyard was beautiful in the early autumn light, with grapevines heavy with fruit and the air carrying the scent of harvest. Penelope wore a simple ivory dress that made Vincent's breath catch when he saw her walking down the aisle, her father's watch pinned to her bouquet in memory of the man who had inspired her career. Vincent wore a classic black tuxedo and couldn't stop smiling. Vivian and Deanne stood up as their respective attendants, both dabbing at tears throughout the ceremony. When it came time for vows, Vincent took a deep breath. "Penelope, you walked into my life and challenged everything I thought I knew. You showed me that being strong doesn't mean being alone, that caring about people isn't a weakness but a strength. You've made me better in every way. I promise to always listen to your perspective, even when we disagree. I promise to prioritize us, not just the business. I promise to be your partner in all things forever." Penelope's turn came, her voice steady despite the emotion. "Vincent, loving you has been the greatest adventure. You're brilliant and driven and more compassionate than you give yourself credit for. You've shown me that compromise isn't about losing yourself, but about building something stronger together. I promise to challenge you when you need it and support you always. I promise to be your equal partner in life and love. I promise to choose us every single day." They exchanged rings, and when the officiant pronounced them married, Vincent kissed her with a tenderness that made several guests openly weep. The reception was joyous. They danced under string lights, shared toasts from family and friends, and celebrated the beginning of their life together. Marcus from accounting gave a surprisingly funny speech about how the entire office had a betting pool on when the CEO and HR director would finally get together. Mrs. Zhao welcomed Penelope officially into the family with words that had both women crying. As the evening wound down, Vincent and Penelope snuck away from the reception for a quiet moment alone under the stars. "Mrs. Zhao," Vincent said, pulling her close. "Mr. Zhao," she replied with a smile. "I used to think I had everything figured out. Business was what mattered. Success was measured in market share and profit margins. Then you showed me what really matters. And what's that? This. Us. Building a life that means something beyond quarterly reports. I'm not saying business isn't important, but it's not everything." "You're everything." She kissed him softly. "We're everything. Together." They honeymooned in Italy for 2 weeks, completely unplugging from work for the first time in either of their careers. They explored ancient ruins, ate incredible food, and spent long, lazy mornings in bed talking about their future. They discussed their dreams not just for the company, but for their life together. Children, maybe 2 or 3, a house with a big backyard, annual vacations where they actually relaxed. Growing old together. When they returned, they moved into a house they had bought together, not the massive mansion Vincent could have afforded, but a comfortable home in a good neighborhood with a garden Penelope was excited to cultivate. Work continued to go well. With Vincent having turned down the European expansion, they focused on consolidating their domestic position and improving internal operations. Penelope launched a mentorship program that paired senior employees with newer hires, creating pathways for advancement. Vincent invested in updated equipment that made jobs safer and more efficient. They were building something sustainable, something that honored both their values. 6 months after their wedding, Penelope began feeling tired and nauseous. At first she attributed it to a busy period at work, but when the symptoms persisted, she took a pregnancy test. 2 lines. Positive. She stared at it in shock and joy, her hand unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach. They had talked about wanting children but hadn't been actively trying yet. Life, it seemed, had its own timeline. That evening she set up a surprise for Vincent. When he came home from work, he found a trail of notes leading from the front door through the house, each one with a clue about their future. The final note led him to the kitchen, where Penelope waited with a tiny pair of baby shoes on the counter. Vincent picked them up, confused, then understanding dawned on his face. We're pregnant," Penelope confirmed, her eyes shining. He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, lifting her up and spinning her around before setting her down gently, his hands immediately moving to her stomach. "We're having a baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "We're having a baby," she confirmed. They held each other, both crying happy tears, overwhelmed by the magnitude of it. The pregnancy wasn't easy. Penelope dealt with severe morning sickness in the first trimester that made working difficult. Vincent, true to his word about being a partner, stepped up completely. He worked from home when he could to be with her, took over all the cooking, and made sure she got rest even when she insisted she was fine. "You don't have to baby me," she protested one evening when he brought her soup and crackers for the 3rd time that day. "You're growing a human, our human. Let me take care of you." As her pregnancy progressed and the morning sickness faded, Penelope glowed. Vincent became obsessed with pregnancy books and apps, tracking every stage of development. He talked to her belly, convinced the baby could hear him. "You're such a dad already," she teased. "I want them to know my voice." At work, they prepared for Penelope's maternity leave. She trained her assistant director to take over her duties temporarily and established systems to ensure smooth operations. Vincent had already announced he would be taking parental leave as well, unprecedented for a CEO, but in line with the family-friendly policies Penelope had championed. The baby shower, organized by Diane and Vivian, was beautiful. Their house filled with friends and family, celebrating the new life about to join them. Penelope sat in a chair decorated with flowers while Vincent sat beside her, his hand resting on her belly, feeling the baby kick. "We're going to have a son," Vincent said, because they had learned at the 20-week ultrasound they were expecting a boy. "A son who hopefully inherits your intelligence and my emotional awareness," Penelope said, "and your kindness and my determination. We're going to be terrible, you know. Hovering parents who worry about everything. Absolutely. But we'll worry together." 3 days before her due date, Penelope woke Vincent at 2 in the morning. "It's time." He was out of bed instantly, suddenly calm and focused despite his nerves. He grabbed the hospital bag they had packed weeks ago, helped her to the car, and drove carefully to the hospital while she breathed through contractions. Labor was long and difficult. Vincent stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, encouraging her, refusing to leave even when the nurses offered him breaks. 17 hours after they arrived at the hospital, Peter Zhao came into the world, small and perfect and wailing at the injustice of being born. "He's got your lungs," Vincent joked as the nurse placed their son on Penelope's chest. "And your stubbornness, I'm sure," Penelope replied, but her voice was filled with awe. Vincent's hand shook as he touched his son's tiny fingers. "Hi, Peter. I'm your dad. I'm going to mess up a lot, but I'm going to love you with everything I have." Penelope looked up at her husband, seeing tears streaming down his face, and felt her heart expand impossibly further. This man who had seemed so cold and distant when she first met him was crying over their newborn son. They had come so far together. The first months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful and harder than either of them had imagined. Peter was colicky, crying for hours at a time, sleeping in short bursts. Penelope and Vincent took turns walking him, bouncing him, singing to him, operating on minimal sleep and maximum coffee. "No one tells you how hard this part is," Vincent said one night at 3 in the morning, Peter finally asleep on his shoulder. "If they did, the species would die out," Penelope agreed from where she was collapsed on the couch. But there were magical moments, too. Peter's first smile, which he gave to Vincent during a diaper change. His developing personality, curious and determined. The way he would calm when they both sang to him together, even though neither could carry a tune. They returned to work gradually, both on reduced schedules at first, prioritizing family time. The company didn't fall apart. In fact, the leadership team rose to the challenge, proving that strong systems and good people could sustain success without requiring the CEO to sacrifice everything. Vincent had learned that balance was possible. Not easy and requiring constant adjustment, but possible. Peter's first birthday party was in their backyard on a warm June day. Both families came, along with friends and a few close colleagues. Peter, dressed in a tiny button-up shirt that matched his father's, smashed cake into his face with gleeful abandon. "He definitely inherited your messy eating," Penelope told Vincent. "I'm a very neat eater, thank you." "You have frosting on your shirt right now." Vincent looked down. Peter had indeed gotten him. "That's different, that's Peter's frosting." Later, after guests had left and Peter was asleep, Penelope and Vincent sat on their back porch, watching the sunset. "Can you believe it's been almost 3 years since that first boardroom argument?" Penelope asked. "Best argument I ever had. Led to all of this. We were so wrong about each other at first. We were both right about some things, wrong about others. That's what made us perfect together. You balance me, make me better. You challenge me, make me stronger." Vincent pulled her close. "I'm glad we were opposites. Glad we didn't realize at first how perfect we'd be together. It made falling in love all the more meaningful. You're getting sentimental in your old age. I'm 34, not ancient. Practically retirement age." He tickled her side, making her squeal and laugh. They wrestled playfully for a moment before settling back into comfortable silence. "Want to know a secret?" Vincent asked. "Always. I'm thinking about hiring a co-CEO, someone to share the leadership burden so I can spend even more time with you and Peter, maybe more kids if you want." Penelope sat up to look at him. "Really, really. The company is stable, I have an incredible leadership team, and I don't want to miss Peter growing up or any future children we might have. Dad worked himself to death, and I understand why he did it, but I want to make different choices. You've come a long way from the man who wanted to work 18-hour days. I had a good teacher." They sat there as the stars came out, planning their future. More children, yes. A family vacation next summer, renovating the house to add a playroom. Growing old together, watching their children grow, building a life that mattered beyond any quarterly report. 2 years later, they welcomed twins, a girl they named Pearl and another boy they named Patrick. The house became wonderfully chaotic, full of laughter and toys and the beautiful mess of a growing family. Vincent had indeed brought in a co-CEO, a brilliant woman named Sarah who shared his vision for the company but brought her own perspectives. He still worked, still loved the business, but it no longer consumed him. He coached Peter's youth soccer team. He had weekly date nights with Penelope. He was present in a way he had never imagined being. Penelope continued her work in HR, though also on a more flexible schedule. She had written a book about human-centered business practices that had become required reading in MBA programs. She consulted with other companies, spreading her philosophy beyond just Zhao manufacturing. Together, they had built something extraordinary, not just a successful business, but a successful life. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Vincent surprised Penelope with a trip back to the vineyard where they had married. They left the kids with both grandmothers for the weekend and drove out for a quiet celebration. Walking through the same vineyard, now familiar and beloved, Penelope reflected on their journey. "You remember what you said to me at our wedding?" she asked. "About how I challenged everything you thought you knew, of course. I was terrified when I first started challenging you. I thought you'd fire me, that I was throwing away my career for principles. But I couldn't stay quiet when I saw things I thought were wrong." Vincent stopped walking, turning to face her. "I'm so grateful you didn't stay quiet. You saved me from becoming the kind of leader I would have hated. Cold, disconnected, caring only about numbers. You reminded me that success without meaning is hollow. And you reminded me that business acumen matters, that sometimes hard decisions have to be made. We made each other better." "Still do," he said, kissing her softly. They renewed their vows that weekend, just the two of them and the efficient, reaffirming their commitment to each other and the life they had built. Years continued to pass. Peter grew into a thoughtful boy who loved building things, taking apart machines to understand how they worked. Pearl was artistic and empathetic, always bringing home stray animals and organizing fundraisers for causes she cared about. Patrick was the athlete, energetic and competitive, but with a sweetness that made everyone love him. Penelope and Vincent raised them with the values they had learned together, the importance of both achievement and compassion. of working hard but prioritizing relationships, of seeing people as individuals rather than numbers. The company thrived under its dual CEO leadership model. Vincent and Sarah made an excellent team, and with more free time, Vincent developed mentorship relationships with young entrepreneurs, teaching them not just business strategy but life balance. Penelope's work expanded beyond Zhao manufacturing. She joined nonprofit boards, advised startups on human resources practices, and became a sought-after speaker on corporate culture and employee well-being. But their favorite times were still the simple ones: family dinners where everyone talked over each other, weekend hikes in the mountains, game nights that got absurdly competitive, reading stories to the kids before bed. On their 10th anniversary, they gathered their children around and told them the story of how they met. "You used to argue?" Pearl asked, shocked. "All the time," Penelope confirmed. "Your mother thought I was a heartless robot," Vincent added. "And your father thought I was an impractical idealist." "But we were both wrong," Vincent said, looking at Penelope with love that hadn't dimmed in a decade. "We were actually perfect for each other. We just didn't know it yet." "That's gross," Peter said, making a face, but he was smiling. "One day you'll understand," Penelope told him. "Sometimes the person who challenges you the most is exactly who you need." As the children ran off to play, Vincent pulled Penelope into his arms. 10 years, he said. "Best decade of my life, only getting better from here." "Think we'll make it another 10? I think we'll make it forever." They kissed while their children made exaggerated gagging sounds in the background, and Penelope knew with absolute certainty that she was right. They would make it forever. Because that's what happened when two opposite people discovered they fit together perfectly. When someone who valued profits learned to value people, and someone who valued people learned that practical business sense mattered too. When both were willing to change, to grow, to meet in the middle and build something neither could have created alone. They had been complete opposites who hadn't known that different would make them perfect. But life had taught them otherwise, and the lesson had been worth every challenging, wonderful moment. 20 years after that first boardroom argument, Penelope and Vincent sat on their porch, the same house, though it had been renovated and expanded to accommodate their growing family over the years. Their children were grown now. Peter was at engineering school. Pearl was studying social work. Patrick was finishing high school and had already been recruited by 3 different universities for soccer. "Empty nest next year," Penelope said, reaching for Vincent's hand, terrifying and exciting all at once. "We'll have to figure out who we are as just us again," Vincent smiled. "I think we'll manage. We're pretty good at figuring things out together." The company had been passed on to new leadership. Both Vincent and Penelope had retired from active management, though they stayed on as board members and advisors. Zhao Manufacturing was stronger than ever, built on a foundation of both business excellence and human compassion. "You have any regrets?" Vincent asked. Penelope thought about it. "Not a single one. You? Only that I didn't realize sooner what you meant to me. All those months we spent arguing when we could have been building something together. We were building something. We just didn't know it. Every argument, every disagreement, every time we challenged each other, we were learning how to be partners." "You're right," he admitted. "You usually are. I'm going to remind you that you said that. Please do." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere in the distance, they could hear Patrick practicing with a soccer ball. Pearl's art studio light was on in the converted garage. Peter would call soon. He always called on Sunday evenings. Life had turned out nothing like either of them had planned. It had turned out so much better, because sometimes the person you clash with, the one who sees the world completely differently, the one who challenges everything you think you know. Sometimes that person is exactly who you need. Sometimes opposites don't just attract, they transform each other. They create something neither could have imagined alone. Vincent and Penelope had been complete opposites. A CEO focused on profits and growth, and an HR director focused on people and well-being. They had seemed incompatible, fundamentally different in values and approach, but those differences hadn't driven them apart. They had been the foundation of something stronger. They had learned from each other, changed each other, balanced each other. And in doing so, they had discovered a love that was deep and true and lasting. They had built a life together that honored both their values. A successful company that treated people well. A family raised with both ambition and compassion. A partnership of equals who made each other better every single day. As the last light faded from the sky and stars began to appear, Vincent kissed his wife's temple. "I love you," he said, words that came easily now after decades of practice. "I love you too," Penelope replied, leaning into him. "Always have, always will." And sitting there together, hands clasped, hearts intertwined, they were living proof that sometimes the most perfect matches come from the most unlikely places. That love doesn't require sameness, but rather the willingness to see value in difference. That two people who seem completely wrong for each other can actually be absolutely, perfectly, wonderfully right. Their story had started with an argument in a boardroom and evolved into a lifetime of love. And if you asked either of them, they would tell you they wouldn't change a single moment of it. Every challenge, every disagreement, every time they had to work to understand each other, it had all been worth it. Because they had found something rare and precious. A love built not on similarity, but on complementary differences. A partnership that made both of them better than they ever could have been alone. And as they walked back into their house together, ready for whatever the next chapter of their lives would bring, they carried with them the knowledge that they had built something extraordinary. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worthwhile. Not what either had expected, but exactly what both had needed. They had been complete opposites who discovered that different was exactly what would make them perfect.